These are my top 10 best teams heading into the 2026 NBA season. Starting us off at number 10, I've got the Milwaukee Bucks. Their offseason drew a lot of noise. Waiving Damian Lillard shocked the NBA world to its core, and replacing him with Miles Turner felt jarring on paper. But after a week or so to let the dust settle, I've actually come around to the idea of these moves. Rather than dwell on what they lost, I want to focus on what they're now building and why I think this makes them the 10th best team in basketball. The outrage around Milwaukee's decisions made it seem like they had botched something easy, but truth be told, it was never that simple. Lillard was not coming back. Brook Lopez was gone, and they had no center. The Bucks had to act quickly. Signing Miles Turner wasn't just a patch, it was a fit. He protects the rim, spaces the floor, and plays with real pace. That last part was key, because this team's identity is shifting. Late last season, when Lillard sat, the Bucks found something. They went on an 8-game winning streak just by handing Giannis the ball, surrounding him with shooters, and letting him drive downhill as a point forward. He'd collapse the defense, either finish strong or kick it out. It was fast, simple, and best of all, it worked. And now it's official. This is the Bucks' plan next season. Doc Rivers came out and said it during the Summer League. Giannis is our point guard, and Turner's press conference echoed the same narrative. Everything Milwaukee is doing, spacing the floor, pushing the pace, and giving Giannis room to run, is designed around that plan. And when the Bucks got out in transition last season, they really did look like a different team. Giannis is already a fast break monster. Now they're giving him the green light to run, and as Doc put it, you can't pick up Giannis at half court and expect to stop him. He's too fast, too strong, and once he gets downhill, it is over. It's either a bucket or a kick-out three to a quality shooter. That's the vision, that's the blueprint, and I think it's a really good one. But I've still got them at number 10, and that's because this group is young. Kevin Porter Jr., Gary Trent, AJ Green, and Ryan Rollins will all be stepping into bigger roles this season. If their development continues the way it was last season, the Bucks could really jump even higher. But if it stalls, they could slip right out of the top 10. So for right now, I'm placing them at 10th, but they're one of the more intriguing teams coming into next season, that's for sure. Coming in at number 9, I've got the Dallas Mavericks. And funnily enough, it's for a lot of the same reasons I just talked about with Milwaukee. Just like the Bucks are handing the keys to Giannis full time, Dallas seem to be flirting with the same idea of doing the same with rookie Cooper Flag. And with Kyrie Irving likely out for most of next season, that move starts to make a lot more sense. Jason Kidd, the same coach who first made Giannis a point guard, is looking to run back that experiment again, this time with Flag. Now yes, they also signed D'Angelo Russell, who gives them a steady hand at point guard, but I really think that's more of a safety net than their actual plan. In his first Summer League game, Flag ran the show, and while the numbers weren't pretty, just 5 of 21 from the field, his command of the game stood out. For stretches, I thought he did look pretty composed, handled the pressure, and showed early signs of being a leader. Sure, there are some rookie rough spots, especially with that shot selection, but that's to be expected, and it's why the Summer League exists in the first place, to iron out these creases. The real intrigue lies in how Flag is going to fit with Anthony Davis. That duo could be a nightmare on defense, and while it might take some time offensively, I think the upside's legit. The issue is depth. Outside of Russell, the Mavericks don't have any other reliable ball handlers, which means Flag is going to get a real shot early, even if it appears to fail, because Dallas don't have any other options. If it clicks, the payoff could be huge, but early, it could look pretty ugly. That being said, I still have them at 9. Not higher, and I stand by it. Conference ranking video, I saw some comments about Dallas being too low, but rookies just don't usually move the needle that much in their first year. Magic did, but he had Kareem. Wemby didn't, and even LeBron didn't. Flag will no doubt eventually be a massive needle mover, but I think it's too much to ask right away. And for the rest of the roster, it is basically last year's team, which struggled to stay healthy and never really found a rhythm. Kyrie's already out, and with AD healthy, you're always one awkward landing away from another missed stretch. So if they do stay healthy and Flag develops fast, sure, they could push for a top 5 spot. But with so many variables, I just don't see it happening consistently enough to put them any higher right now. And that's why I've got Dallas at 9. Coming in at number 8, I have the LA Clippers. And yeah, I know they were a first round exit last season, but if you actually watched that Denver series, it was one of the more impressive early exits you're going to see in a while. Expectations were so low coming into the season for the Clippers, mostly due to injury concerns, but they still managed to put together a really strong regular season, especially defensively. Once Kawhi came back and found his rhythm, their offense picked up, as by the second half of the year, they'd quietly become one of the better balanced teams in the whole league. That Game 7 against Denver certainly wasn't pretty, but the series as a whole showed this team absolutely belongs in the contender conversation. One of their smartest offseason moves was adding Brook Lopez. Between him and Zubac, they now have 48 minutes of reliable center play, with Lopez giving them a stretch element that they didn't have before with his three-point shooting. Zubac quietly had the best season of his career, finishing at the rim, owning the glass, and bringing real physicality. With both of them in the mix, the Clippers can tailor their lineups in all kinds of different ways, especially come playoff time. The core is still intact. Harden may not be the MVP version anymore, but he's still one of the more smarter offensive players in the league, particularly with his playmaking. And Kawhi, when healthy, he is still the guy. He was fantastic in that Denver series, as when he gets that mid-range jumper falling, he's still basically impossible to stop. Add to that the recent trade. Norman Powell out, John Collins in. For me, I really like this deal. Collins was quietly great last season, so much so that the tanking Utah Jazz had to come up with fake injuries just for him not to play because he was leading them to too many wins. He shot 40% from 3, gives them a legit lob threat, and fits better to either center or even a small ball 5. He's a better on-court fit than Powell and a cleaner long-term financial bet as well, avoiding the cap squeeze of Powell's next contract, which would have put them in serious apron difficulties. As always, the biggest question for the Clippers is their health. It's always a swing factor. If this core finally gets healthy, I think they do have enough two-way firepower to make a serious push. No, they're not title favorites, but if everything breaks right this time, don't be surprised if they are still hanging around late in May. In at number 7, I've got the New York Knicks. And yeah, I know they just made the conference finals and beat the reigning champion Celtics, but even the Knicks didn't seem entirely sold on how real of a run that was. You don't fire your head coach weeks after a deep playoff push unless something's off, and that move away from Thibodeau felt like a clear message. This team looked better on paper than it actually was. Go back and watch that Boston series. The cracks are there. The Celtics were ice cold from 3, then lost their best player to an Achilles injury, and the Knicks still found themselves getting run off the floor for long stretches. They had to make 2 20-point comebacks in games 1 and 2 to a Celtics team that couldn't buy a bucket. Those wins said a lot more about grit than actual dominance, and a lot of that struggle came back to their lineup issues. Josh Hart started all season, but it was clear it just never worked. I think he would have been best used as a 6th man, pushing tempo, defending, making plays, and not just standing in the corner on offense. The numbers certainly back that up as well. Their starting 5 in the postseason, the one that took them to the conference finals, had a negative net rating of -3.2, ranking in just the 35th percentile league-wide. They weren't scoring efficiently, and their defense was slipping. A change needs to come, and I feel like it will. New head coach Mike Brown, known for his adaptable modern style, has already hinted at a more flexible approach. He mentioned the team's length and versatility, stating that he felt like it was never fully utilized. A guy like Deuce McBride in the starting five could help balance things out and space the floor better. And then there's Mikal Bridges. Last season, he just looked like a role player, kind of just getting shots here and there. And for a guy you gave up 5 first-round picks to get, he simply has to be more integrated. He's too talented for just sitting and waiting. He can defend, shoot, create, and potentially carry stretches if given the opportunity. If Coach Brown unlocks that side of Bridges, the Knicks' ceiling instantly jumps. So while this may feel low for a conference finalist, I do have the Knicks at 7. If they can modernize their rotation, getting away from being a Brunson-centric offense, get some better defensive effort from Cat, and actually use the talent they have in a smarter way, I would be more than willing to bump them up closer to the top 5. But until then, they're just outside that true contender tier. At number 6, heading into the 2026 NBA season, I've got the Golden State Warriors. And honestly, I don't think people realize how close this team actually was to making a real run last season. Yeah, they went down in round 2, but that was mostly because of a Steph Curry injury in game 1. Even without him at full strength, they still gave Minnesota a really competitive series. The Wolves struggled to generate offense, and if Steph had been healthy, I genuinely think the Warriors would have won that series. This offseason, though, Golden State's been really quiet so far. They let Kevon Looney walk, and there's been some serious discussions about moving Jonathan Kuminga in a potential sign and trade deal for some more win-now depth. That would certainly make sense. What they need is a bigger 3-and-D wing who can balance their size, especially for those matchups where teams are going to try and bully them given their smaller guard rotation. Even someone like Al Horford, who has been rumored heavily, would be a good pickup, stretching the floor, anchoring the bench units, and providing them with another veteran presence to an already battle-tested core. Whenever the Warriors finally make a move, the formula is already in place. They just need some guys to come in and play some competent basketball. They've got Steph, and they now have Jimmy Butler, who last season might have been the best thing to happen to this team since Kevin Durant. Before Butler arrived, they were tough but flawed. Decent defense, streaky offense, little rim pressure, and no reliable second scorer in the half court. But Jimmy Butler changed all of that. He brought the force, grit, rim pressure, and playoff mentality that completely transformed the team's identity. And the numbers certainly back all of that up. With Jimmy on the floor, their free throw rate shot up to 25.8 in the 99th percentile. Their defensive rating jumped into the 93rd percentile, holding opponents to 108.2 points per 100. And their net rating was a plus 9.6, landing them in the 90th percentile. These are really title contender numbers. But without him, it was a massive drop. Just a 16.7 free throw rate in the 15th percentile, a mediocre plus 0.7 net rating in the 58th percentile, and a defensive slippage to the 67th percentile, all of which were massive swings. Butler came in and gave them exactly what they needed. A secondary closer, someone to take more pressure off of Steph, someone to get to the line, defend at a high level, and help preserve the core's legs. So now, with Steph healthy, Jimmy in a better rhythm, and a few more tweaks still to come, I believe the Warriors should be right back in the mix. They were already knocking on the door last season, but this year, I think they might just break through. Now, in at number 5, I have the Cleveland Cavaliers, the final Eastern Conference team in the top 10. What makes Cleveland so compelling is how young and talented their core is, and more importantly, how they're clearly trending up. Evan Mobley just broke through in a massive way, winning the Defensive Player of the Year and showing some more serious offensive improvements. His confidence is building, and his game is finally starting to match his defensive dominance. Darius Garland also had a really strong year. He was finally healthy, he looked sharp, and consistently productive. He was a massive reason as to why their offense looked as good as it did, giving the team 3-point shooting, shot creation, and really good ball movement. Then, they've also made a couple of good moves. Trading for DeAndre Hunter gave them a steady two-way wing who fit their system pretty perfectly. And now in the offseason, they just pulled off a miraculous trade, flipping Isaac Okoro in a straight swap for Lonzo Ball. For me, I think that was highway robbery. Now, there are still some health concerns with Lonzo, but even if he gets close to his old form, he brings the defensive length, transition playmaking, and composure for the second unit, and these are all things that this team has lacked in the big moments. All in all, this roster is now stronger and more complete than it was a year ago. Still, I can't put them any higher than 5, and that's mostly because of what happens when the playoffs roll around. In the regular season, the Cavaliers play team-first basketball. Garland at the helm, Mobley making quick reads, Max Strus spacing the floor, and they get plenty of bench contributions. But once the playoffs begin, everything seems to shift into a Donovan Mitchell mode. The offense bogs down, the ball stops moving, and Mitchell starts jacking up shot after shot. When he's hot, it's spectacular, but it can easily throw off the entire team's rhythm, and it often does. Role players fade, touches disappear, and when they are needed in crunch time to take pressure off Mitchell, they've gone ice cold and lost their rhythm. It's a pattern that's followed Mitchell for years, and Cleveland has to make a choice early in the season. Either give Donovan Mitchell more touches in the regular season so everybody can adjust, or actually stick to that team-first identity and try to carry that into the playoffs. What they can't do is stay complacent and just hope that once the playoffs begin and they start to play differently, that it's just going to work, because it doesn't. That being said, I believe they are the best team in the East, and given how open the conference is looking this season, the Cavaliers have more than just a real shot. They could pretty easily find themselves in the finals, because the talent is there and they just have to trust it. Now, coming in at number 4, I have the Minnesota Timberwolves, a team that's quietly built one of the most stable cores in the league and is coming off back-to-back trips to the Western Conference Finals. That alone says plenty about how far they've come. Losing Nickeil Alexander-Walker in free agency certainly hurts, as he brought the shot-making, playmaking, and defense off the bench that was really important. But the Wolves are banking on internal growth. Between Terrence Shannon Jr., Jalen Clark, and Rob Dillingham, there's hope that at least one or maybe 2 of these guys can step up and plug the hole for this team next season. Also, I honestly didn't think they'd be able to keep both Julius Randle and Naz Reid under the new CBA conditions, but they somehow managed to pull it off. Naz Reid, in particular, has become such a vital piece. He's versatile, fearless, and he always brings that off-the-bench scoring punch. That kind of continuity really matters for a team that's been on the brink the last 2 years. What gives me real confidence for the Wolves next season is how they ended last year. Early on, the offense was certainly clunky, but it all came together late. They had better spacing, sharper ball movement, as the rhythm was finally clicking to complement their already elite defense. That version of the Wolves were dangerous, and the young guys, Shannon, Clark, and Dillingham, could get them to another level. Of course, all of this revolves around Anthony Edwards, who just continues to ascend. Last season was his most complete yet, not just by the stats, but by the polish. The biggest thing was the three-point shooting leap, forcing defenses to now have to respect him at all levels, opening up the floor not just for everybody else, but also to leverage his new three-point shooting ability into better driving lanes. If he can now take that next step as a better playmaker, reading defenses, making quicker passes, and finding the open shooters, this team can become a real threat, not just a tough out. As if Anthony Edwards can make another giant leap, Minnesota could be knocking on the door of the top 3. Now, at number 3, I've got the Houston Rockets, a team that's no longer building. They've officially arrived. They were already really good last season and pushed a veteran Warriors team to 7 games, despite lacking any guy who could reliably create in the clutch. They've now completely filled that hole with Kevin Durant, one of the greatest tough shot makers in NBA history. There's no playoff scheme that can truly take him out of a game, and his presence gives Houston the elite half-court scorer that they desperately missed. But Durant wasn't the only move. They also landed Dorian Finney-Smith, an elite role player who defends, hits threes, and will perfectly fit into their system. Houston also upgraded their backup center depth by replacing Jock Landale with Clint Capella. So suddenly, their bench unit got a whole lot better. Capella, Jabari Smith Jr., Tari Eason, Finney Smith, and potentially Steven Adams depending on the rotation. Add in Reed Shepherd, last year's 3rd overall pick, who's already looking like a ready-made backup point guard, and this could really be the deepest team in the league. Amen Thompson continues to look like a future star. His defense is already elite, and if that jumper can even come around a little, he's going to be a serious problem. There's the all-star, Alperen Şengün, who was able to stand up against one of the better defenses in the whole playoffs last year and give them real trouble. He's a unique offensive hub at the center, creative, unselfish, and constantly keeping defenses off balance due to the variety of ways he can put the ball in the bucket. Alongside him, to be the team's floor general, Fred VanVleet is a very good option, as he brings the stability, poise, and leadership to guide this team that's stacked with young talent. Defensively, I think Houston are going to be terrifying, as they have so many tools to be incredible on that end, with all of the length, switchability, rim protection, and athleticism across the board. To me, they should be a top 5 defense, but it's offensively where there are still things to work out. Lineup combinations, spacing, who's going to be initiating, how and when they use Kevin Durant, all of these questions have to be answered. Certainly, the pieces are all there, but it's going to take them a second to get fully acclimated. So while I'm not ready to lock them into the top 2 just yet, Houston is clearly a contender this season. Now, in at number 2, I have the Denver Nuggets. Though I went back and forth on putting them at number 1. They just took the Thunder to 7 games last postseason while playing well below their usual standard, and now they've improved. That's what makes Denver absolutely terrifying. Their biggest upgrade came with depth. Denver finally fixed their long-standing issue with their bench, and they did it smartly. They moved on from Michael Porter Jr.'s inconsistencies and added Cam Johnson, undoubtedly a better fit next to Jokic. More dependable, a better athlete, can put up more of a fight on the defensive end, and is more willing to play within the flow of the team. Then they landed Jonas Valanciunas to back up Jokic. At one point, it did look like he might leave for Greece, but Denver was able to get him back on a better deal. So, for the first time in years, they have a legitimate backup center behind Jokic. But they did not stop there. They signed Tim Hardaway Jr. on a vet minimum, and unbelievably, they also brought back championship favorite Bruce Brown on a vet minimum as well. That's outrageous value for 2 guys who can come in and actually make a really big difference. Denver just got everything they needed. We already know what the starting 5 is capable of. Jokic alone makes any lineup elite, and with him on the court last postseason, Denver had a plus 10.9 net rating, a 119.9 offensive rating, good for the 65th percentile, and a 109 defensive rating, good enough for the 61st percentile. But when he sat, they were a travesty. The Nuggets posted a minus 31.1 net rating, 0 percentile. They scored just 97.8 points per 100 while allowing 129. That isn't just bad. Their bench unit was simply unplayable. So to take the champs to 7 while you're hauling that kind of a bench around, that tells you all you need to know about just how good their starting unit was. Now imagine that same team, but with a far better bench backing them up. A bench that can now at least stay afloat. If that's what we're getting next year, Denver might not just be a top 2 team. They might be the best team in basketball, period. But coming in as my best team in the league next season is going to be the Oklahoma City Thunder. Really, how could it be anybody else? They're the defending champs, they've got the most balanced roster in the NBA, and they're not just built for now. They're built to run the league for the rest of the decade. Even with the financial hurdles ahead, for now, they still get to run it back. That's a rare luxury in today's NBA, where the CBA forces teams to have to shed depth and cut corners consistently. But Oklahoma City, they're able to bring back their entire championship core. The same group, same chemistry, same identity, only with more growth and experience under their belts. Of course though, it isn't going to last forever. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Jalen Williams, and Chet Holmgren all just signed massive contract extensions that will soon start squeezing at their cap flexibility. After this season, tough decisions loom ahead, as keeping both Lou Dort and Isaiah Hartenstein long-term feels borderline impossible right now unless they both take drastic pay cuts. So in many ways, this could be the last run for this version of the Thunder. But what a version it is. It's wild how young they still are. They just became the second youngest team to ever win a title, with Shai at 26, J-Dub at 24, and Chet at 23, as they're all just barely scratching the surface of their prime. They could dominate the league for the next 5 to 7 seasons easy. And while the roster hasn't changed all that much on paper, the scary part is how they are going to be even better next year. Take Jalen Williams, for example. He played the entire playoffs with a torn ligament in his hand and was still electric. Now fully healthy, with more on-ball reps and rhythm, he's primed for a massive leap next season. Then there's Chet Holmgren. A fractured hip costed him nearly 50 games next season, and though there were still flashes of brilliance, you could tell that he just wasn't himself. Less mobile, couldn't buy a bucket for massive stretches offensively, as he wasn't able to have his usual offensive impact. But with a full off season to recover and recondition, I expect him to go to a different level next year. His skill set is just too special for him not to. And let's not forget, this team wasn't even fully healthy last season. They navigated injuries for the whole year, rotated lineups mid-playoffs, and still they ran through the Western Conference and took home the Larry O'Brien. So what happens if they stay healthy? What happens if Shai continues to play at an MVP level? J-Dub officially ascends into a consistent all-star status, and what happens if Chet Holmgren blossoms into the best third option in the league? This is a terrifying thought for the rest of the league, and it's even more scary when you realize just how likely this is. And that is why Oklahoma City will be the best team next season. And if you want to see how every single team stacks up, then you can check out my Eastern and Western Conference tier videos where I break it all down.